What is up, you guys? Welcome back to Tidal Gardens. We have been working on this greenhouse update now for what seems like almost a year. It's been a monumental move just because we had to break down three 1,000-gallon systems to replace it with two much smaller systems. Each one of these is roughly, I don't know, 600 to 800 gallons maybe. Shuffling around that much livestock over the course of months was a major challenge. But we are finally here. And first impressions, I love this new layout. It is so much easier to get in and around those tanks. It greatly opened up the floor space. These tanks are at like the perfect height for maintenance. Previously, there was essentially three levels of tanks, and none of them were at the best working height. The plumbing got way tighter and more organized. I really love how we were able to properly brace everything to the aluminum stands using fiberglass unistrut and unistrut clamps. I like how the plumbing is appropriately sized, or should I say, probably oversized for the application. So there's much less risk of any kind of like blockages in the drains or anything like that. And perhaps most importantly, we have some serious business mechanical filtration going on. Mechanical filtration will always be a point of contention, but in an aquaculture environment, I find it very helpful. These types of industrial systems tend to get neglected quite a bit more than, say, a home show tank. And so in this case, for what we're doing, having consistent mechanical filtration that is much less maintenance than dealing with filter socks is a big benefit. And lastly, just as far as the aesthetics of it go, it's so much cleaner going with these aluminum stands from Alufab than the previous cinder block construction, which it worked for a very long time, but the additional polish of the aluminum as well as the flexibility to mount things like controllers, the plumbing to really reinforce all that. And lastly, just the simple things, being able to brace, for example, the CO2 canister to one of the legs of the utility stand. One other addition that we've really appreciated was the custom utility trays. These were made locally out of ABS. Just having a really clean location to do just the tiniest bit of storage has been super helpful. We use these extensively throughout our facility. I can't recommend them enough. The lighting, for the most part, we've repurposed from a bunch of different systems when we were breaking them down. It's a mix of Ecotech Radions. I believe there's 6 fixtures running, but most of them are these Amazon black box fixtures from Vipar Spectra. They are pretty good, I guess. The only big downside I would say to the Amazon fixtures is that they are very spotlighty. So if you're looking for them to cover a large spread, they're not going to do that. They kind of laser down. So in order to cover a similar footprint, you're going to need an additional 1 to 2 fixtures. So that's something you're going to have to budget in. It's not a one-to-one replacement of a premium aquarium light. Also, they are wirelessly controllable. They each have their own little controller, but they do a lot of crosstalk. That pretty much does not work for us. We have to manually program each one. Lastly, we had a lot of power outages in the heat of the summer. One time, there were even rolling blackouts. On one particular day, there were 10 outages. Every single time there's an outage, it royally screws up the programming of these boxes. It messes up their internal clocks. It messes up the actual settings. Keep that in mind as well. They don't recover quite as well as a premium light fixture, but they are cheap. They are really cheap. Sometimes you can get them discounted all the way down to about $125 each. Moving on. I mentioned earlier that we have MRC Filter Rollers installed in the sumps. We've been using them now for a little over 6 months. I really, really like these things. Mainly, it's the amount of labor it saves cleaning filter socks. If you're just dealing with like 1 or 2, let's say even 4, 5, 6 filter socks, not a big deal. but across an entire facility, when you're doing like that much cleaning of filter socks, I can really see a benefit to having all of that automated with a filter roller. For this particular install, we bought an aqua block, which is usually used in filtration systems for ponds. They are buried underground. This just happened to be the perfect size for this filter roller to sit on. The aqua block itself can handle tons of weight because you're meant to basically stack boulders and stuff on it. We had no issue with its weight capacity or anything like that. Also, what's nice is it's a very wide open structure on the inside. The water flowing from the filter roller down into the aqua block, there's no restriction whatsoever. We had two concerns about the filter roller. One of them does not make any sense, but it's definitely true, at least in our experience, and that is the smell. These things somehow don't smell. In a greenhouse setting, you're not really going to notice a smell much anyway, because especially in the summer, it's a wind tunnel. But we have one in the new building as well, and you can be within 1 foot of this thing, and you will not pick up an odor of any kind. That is weirdly impressive. Also weirdly impressive is how long the filter rolls have lasted for us. They come in 2 different microns. The standard unit comes with a 30 micron filter roll. We've opted for one of each just to kind of see. I kind of prefer the 50 micron because I don't know if I really need that level of filtration. So far, the 50 micron has lasted well over the 6 months, and it looks like it's going to last another 6 months. Getting 1 year potentially out of a filter roll for us has been amazing performance. Perhaps not great for MRC because they're not getting tons of filter roller replacements, but yeah, I'm liking it a lot. Again, your mileage may vary just depending on your system. We typically run fairly clean systems here. Still, getting a year out of a single roll is kind of nuts. On to the technical little details, the stuff that I get excited about. When these tanks were previously running, we essentially repurposed all of our old glass tanks. The drains that are inside the tank, we kind of had just makeshift random plumbing. It was kind of goofy. It was kind of unsightly. The guys had found what could be the perfect plumbing fitting. We needed a very particular thing. We needed a 45-degree elbow and preferably dark. So we were looking for schedule 80. Turns out not a lot of people make this sort of thing. And we did find something that was made out of black polypropylene. And it's perfect. However, these things were, I think, $16 each. And I was really like hemming and hawing about that because it's not that we need 1 or 2. We need like 30 something. We needed a lot of them. Bit the bullet, bought them all in Granger. Once I started to install them, it's all worth it. They're perfect. Sometimes just getting the right thing is so rewarding because they are practically invisible against the black background. They're so low profile, and oddly, the polypropylene is such a cool material when you've worked so much with PVC. Just being able to screw this thing in, it feels very substantial, I guess. Next up, we had to redo the heating and cooling systems, going from 3 systems down to 2 systems in slightly different locations. This work was all previously done by our plumber, but I kind of wanted to get some experience in-house to work with PEX. Right now, I don't know why PEX is not more popular in this hobby. It is such a cool material to work with, and it makes plumbing so easy. The stuff that we're working with is called PEX A. There's a few different types of PEX. The nice thing about PEX A specifically is that you can use expansion couplings with it. You can use this specialized PEX expander tool, and what that does is it gives you about 10 seconds to attach the PEX tubing to a special PEX A fitting. It uses this little PEX collar. Now the PEX collar, it actually has like a dead end stop to it. So when you put the tubing in, it bottoms out on that little collar fitting. You expand it with the tool, and then you stick it onto any number of different types of PEX A fittings, and those dead end right there too. Within, no joke, 20 seconds, you have a completely super permanent feeling connection. No way this is leaking. A quick note about the cooling system. When we were redoing all these different lines, we had to turn off the cooling system and drain those lines. It took us a while to restart the cooling system, and in the past, I was kind of underwhelmed by its capacity because I think we were really overdoing with the volume that we expected to cool with it. However, when we fired this thing back up, it was only cooling a smaller volume. It was ridiculously impressive. At the time, I think it was like 90 something degrees outside. The tank temperatures without the cooling had risen to something like 85 degrees. It was getting into like scary territory. So we're like, okay, let's spool up this cooling system just to make sure it does something. In the past, again, underwhelming, but let's get some kind of cooling going on. It, no joke, brought the temperature down to 78. So from 86 down to 78 while it's about 100 degrees in the greenhouse. Very, very impressive. Once we started to activate more systems, that performance decreased significantly. So down the road, I think that we're going to have to make some pretty substantial modifications to increase the capacity. But in this particular instance, it was very impressive and very encouraging that we were on the right path. It's just a matter of overall cooling capacity, which can be fixed. That pretty much wraps up this phase of the greenhouse update. It's effectively one half of the greenhouse, and it is the trickiest half by far. If we decide to move forward with the rest of the greenhouse, it is going to be a much smoother, easier process. We're only going to be breaking down one system and replacing it with one system, not breaking down 3 systems before we can start to do some modifications. It's also right by the front door. We don't have to wrestle these really big, cumbersome tanks out of a greenhouse that are these big, cumbersome 300-gallon Rubbermaids through the entire greenhouse past other running systems. It was an ordeal. But the next system that we're going to do, way easier. Another project that we'll be taking on is to update the workstations that go around the perimeter of the greenhouse. These things we just kind of made work for many years. They're not exactly pretty, not exactly efficient, lots of room for improvement there. All right, that does it for this phase of the greenhouse remodel. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And until next time, happy reefing.